And I was at a firm at that time where a lot of my colleagues were getting laid off, which was just horrifying I mean, these were some of the top attorneys graduated from the top schools and they're getting laid off. That's when I realized, that even though well educated, high paying job at the end of the day, it's just a job and it can be taken away. And that was when I really made my mind up that, hey, Jade, you have to take this real estate serious now and get financially independent where you don't need a job.
Welcome to the Path to Wealth, the show about well-being, fulfillment, and financial freedom. And I'm your host, Hannes Hennche. Hello, everybody. Today we have Jade Laye. He's a real estate syndicator and a patent lawyer. And he's been very active in the Atlanta market lately. He's been quite involved in the multifamily real estate space over the last couple of years. I've seen him from the distance doing some great deals, and we're going to hear a little bit more about it. Welcome, Jade.
Thank you, Hans. I'm honored to be here. So thank you for the invitation.
You're welcome. Thank you for your time. So where did your journey start? Like, how did you decide, for example, to become a lawyer? What made you want to pick that profession?
Well, the short story, I grew up humble beginnings in Arkansas. So part of Arkansas called the Delta. It's a poorer side of Arkansas, but, growing up, we always had enough. But definitely, just didn't have, I guess, the nicer things. And so as a kid growing up, I always wanted to have, wealth and means once I got older. And so that's sort of started my dream of, what I could be. I didn't know that ultimately I would end up in real estate, but I mean, that's sort of where that, original hunger came from. So from there, I went off to school, went off to engineering school there at University of Arkansas, Fayetteville. Then I decided to go to law school, a long story there, but, I never wanted to be a lawyer. As a kid, I had a really bad speech impediment. So I still have it now. It's just not as noticeable, but, I always avoided anything to do with speaking. And so I never thought I would become a lawyer, but God had a different plan, and he worked out things in my life where, ultimately that's where I ended up. So
where's the twist there that you went from not wanting to speak to becoming a lawyer? Like, what happened on that path that pushed you in that direction?
Well, I'm a man of faith. And so I was in my last year of engineering school. And so I decided I didn't really want to become an engineer because while in engineering school, I sort of learned that the income for the average engineer sort of caps out at a certain level. And so I didn't want to have a cap on my income. And so I started evaluating other careers, but I still wanted to take advantage of my engineering degree because I had spent, 5 years on it. It's a lot of hard work to get an engineering degree. And so I was introduced into the field of patent law by a lawyer that I knew at the time that was a mentor of mine. And so he asked me if I had ever heard of patent law or what it meant to be a patent attorney. And so I said no. So he educated me on it. And so once I saw that, okay, patent attorneys are some of the highest paid attorneys, again, I mean, my
that got you excited suddenly.
Right. My approach to a career was just always very practical, where, hey, if I have to work, I might as well be paid well if I have to work. So,
Yeah.
hey, and I'm not embarrassed to say that now. I mean, it was money that motivated me, So that was where it's sort of changed. Now, yes, it was still okay. I said, well, Jay, the problem is you don't like to talk, and so but the more I educated myself on, the different types of lawyers. At that point in time, I thought every lawyer had to be in court arguing, but no, it's a lot of different ways to practice law. And so most of my day is spent, alone, where I'm working on a project. And so I don't really have to speak as much as I thought I would, even though on the way to becoming a lawyer, God worked in my life where, I really had to grow. And so I took a lot of courses in public speaking and, and so a lot of things happened along the way to force me to be okay with public speaking, even though, of course, I still don't like to do it. But there was a time when I just simply refused to do it. I would not do it at all. But now, I can get up and speak in front of a group of people. So
I've seen you on stage in front of a couple of hundred people. You can do it.
Yes, but it's very uncomfortable. You can't tell, but it's very uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think it's the same physical thing, being excited and being uncomfortable in terms of, it's just kind of how we look at it, I think.
Yes. Yes, and I would say on that, even though I'm sure we'll get into that as far as the mindset, but, if you want to grow and be more in life, that, at least in my experience, that's always required me to get out of my comfort zone. So, I mean, no matter what that comfort zone is, if you want to grow, you have to get out of that and do more than you have. So,
yeah, you got to break that shell and step through it, right?
Yeah.
So what are you currently growing out of, for example? What are you currently pushing? Like, looking back at the progression of your growth, what are you currently uncomfortable with that you're slowly chipping away at?
At this stage, I would say, because I've gone through single family investing, in the beginning, that was horrifying, and did that. And now it got, it's easy to do now. Then I moved into
that thing got
small
easy.
apartment. Huh?
The dad thing got easy eventually?
Dad? Oh, well, dad is still scary. I have three daughters, man. So yeah, and they're all young. So I'm still scared to death of that. So
yeah.
yeah. But so yeah, I mean, I started out in real estate buying houses, and that was very scary. And then I progressed on to apartments. I started out with smaller apartments, and now I'm doing much larger deals. So I would say now what I'm growing out of is, I'm starting to look at working with, say, private equity groups instead of just all individual investors. Even though, of course, I will continue to bring great investment opportunities to my investors, but now we're starting to look at doing deals with private equity, and of course, that's a different level of scrutiny. It's much larger acquisitions. So that's uncomfortable, and it's something that now you have to learn. But just as I did in the past, I'll learn it and grow. So.
Yeah. Is that kind of clientele familiar to you based on your law work? Since you're already working with, I would say, probably larger corporate clients in the patent law, would you say there's a similar kind of conduct?
Well, I would say no, being that what I do as a lawyer at my law firm, it doesn't have anything to do with my real estate. So, I mean, that's just my thing on the side. But as far as the sort of caliber of the people that
Yeah,
you
that's what I'm
deal
referring
with in
to. Yeah.
these PE groups. I mean, sure, everyone's professional. So I don't meet anyone where it's like I'm intimidated by the individual, but it's just a new arena that you're playing in, and so
Yep.
it's just whenever you're new, you have to learn. Okay, well, what is it that I don't know yet because of lack of
Yeah.
experience with PE? I mean, am I being taken advantage of here? Maybe there are better terms I can get that I just don't know about because I'm not as experienced in this arena. So I mean, it's things like that go through your mind. So
So earlier you mentioned that you had a mentor figure that kind of encouraged you to think about going into patent laws. In the progression of things, do you feel like you always seeked guidance somewhere? Did you have those kind of mentor figures at different stages of your journey?
yes, I mean I God has always put mentors in my life. My original mentor and still my spiritual mentor to this day is my father. And so he has really encouraged me in like everything I've done in life. I mean, I wasn't sure if I could, make it out of small town Arkansas and become an engineer. He encouraged me to do that. I wasn't sure if I could cut it as a lawyer. He encouraged me to do that. Real estate. I wasn't sure if I wanted to even go into real estate because I had always heard the horror stories. I'm going to lose all my money and all that. He encouraged me through biblical principles that he's taught me since I was a kid, but that, son, have faith. I mean, and you use what God has given you. Always put God first, and I mean, He clearly has a plan for your life, and I knew that, and so he would always be there to encourage me when I wasn't quite sure if that's the right way to go, and so as I started in real estate, I knew, okay, I need a mentor to teach me how to do real estate the right way. And so when I
Yeah.
started in houses, I had a mentor that owned a lot of houses and he educated me on how to do houses the right way. And so it was the same thing with apartments where, you know, I encourage everyone. I mean, if you're going to do something in life that's new, find someone that's already done it, that they're where you want to be. They've done it, and learn from that individual. And that can
Yeah.
really keep you from making a lot of mistakes that that people make when they're just going into things by themselves or without having taken enough time to educate themselves.
Yeah. I mean, it can prevent some major missteps, I guess, and save
Yes,
a lot of time to seek out those figures.
yes.
So it seems that your father is a foundation to like many of the major steps you took in life. Is that something? Where does that come from in your dad? Is it something that has been nourished in the family, or
Mhm.
does it come from the Bible itself? Where does that? I don't even have the right word for it, but kind of
Sure.
that level of guidance that your dad has, and that it almost comes from a sense of reflectedness and calmness the way you talk about it.
And I've been very fortunate to have a father that like my father. But he didn't grow up a religious man at all. He did not come to Christ. He did not become a Christian until probably he was 30. But since that time, I mean, God has really worked in his life, and he's always been a student. Okay, he's always been, a reader. I can recall as a kid. I mean, I would always see my father reading a book, so he was always learning.
Yeah.
And so once he became a Christian, he dove into Christianity, the Bible, books after books on theology. And so, he was just able to, even though I was not reading the books, I mean, he would just teach me all that stuff as a kid. And we would, I can recall as a kid, we would drive around Memphis, Tennessee, in these really nice neighborhoods. Well, I mean, I would look at these houses like, wow, I mean, it would be nice to live in one of these nice houses one day. And so as we were doing that, I mean, for hours and hours as I was, growing up, he would just be teaching me biblical principles. And so anyone that knows my dad now, he's a minister, so he pastors a church in Memphis. Anyone that knows him knows that he's a teacher. So if you're around him any amount of time, he's going to teach you something, because that's just what God put in him.
So he literally took you around in those neighborhoods and at the same time taught you those principles. Yes. So it's like building a vision and at the same time, feeding you those biblical principles. Yeah, that's a great foundation to have.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and so and so I would just always I always knew I would do well in life. I always knew I would have money. I just didn't know how I would go about it. But I always knew that, well, Jay, the money is not for you to just spend on you. It's for you to give. Yeah. To give it back. And so that was one of the principles that I was taught as a kid, is that, if God blesses you, he intends you to use that to bless others. So that's,
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and that's what has culminated in my life now, where even in my real estate business now, I have a arm of my real estate company that's a charitable arm, and we give to domestic and international missions, Christian missions here in America and also internationally. And I mean, that's what really kind of drives me now and keeps me excited to keep growing. So
yeah. I just read a quote the other day from Nancy, and it was, if you have plenty, you have to grow the table and not build walls, or something along those lines.
Right.
And I think that's really a common thing we see in the multifamily space, that we all strive to give more. Like we actually come from that place, and that's one of the things I really appreciate in the community that we move in, because most of us, I think, have that good intention and actually want to give part of what they're able to contribute. So what are some of the causes that you have been really passionate about lately that you were able to make a charitable donation to?
Wow. Well, I guess my latest cause that I'm excited about, one is there's a pastor friend of my father's that has a school in Memphis, Tennessee. And so it's a Christian school, but I mean, the school has outreach to all kids. Yeah. And so they do a lot in the community to help teach, children, but a lot of the children can't really afford the tuition in the school. Yeah. And so, I'm able to give to help to pay tuition for some of those students that could otherwise not be in the school. And then they get to be in a great academic environment. But for me, more importantly, it's a great spiritual environment where they're taught biblical principles. They're taught about Christ, and so that's what really drives me. And so I'm a part of that. Also, there are a lot of parts of the world, believe it or not, where um, it's illegal to have a Bible. And so there are some organizations out there that actually smuggle Bibles into these
I've
countries.
never heard
I
of
mean,
that. They smuggle Bibles into
yeah,
countries.
yes, it's very dangerous, and so, man, I mean, and to me, that's just like James Bond type stuff where, it's like, wow, I mean, these people are actually risking their lives to smuggle Bibles in. And so how I can be a part of that is that, I can give money to pay to have the Bibles printed.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, man, that really excites me where it's like, wow, so I can give money and actually pay for Bibles to give to people who have never had a Bible.
Yeah.
We in America don't even think about that because, I mean, there are Bibles everywhere and everything else. But
I mean, I think we in America
so,
here,
I mean,
we don't
that excites me.
we don't think about a lot of things and where they come from, and that it's not available
Right.
in many places. Yeah.
Right. So, things like that, and just it's good to be able to give spontaneously when you hear of a need, and to have money available to do that because of real estate investments. I mean, that really excites me.
Yeah.
And so I'm able to take care of my family and get them everything that they will want, need, but at the same time, I mean, I'm able to help other people, and ultimately that's really what life is all about, is, finding a way to help as many others people as you can. So
I agree. So, how do you plan on handing over those principles that have helped you so much to your three lovely daughters? Like the next generation is lining up. There's many principles here, from spirituals to financials, that have to be conveyed. How do you attempt to go about that challenge?
That's a great question, Hans. A great question, and one that I'm concerned about, and one that, because it's one challenge is that, and my wife and I, we talk about this a lot, is that, I mean, our children are growing up in a way that we didn't grow up. We grew up in a way where we had a hunger for, to grow, because we could look around us and see a lack.
Yeah.
And think, oh, through education and hard work, I can live in a nice house in a nice neighborhood. See, when we may not have necessarily grew up like that. Well, our kids don't have that. They're growing up in nice neighborhoods, nice houses, private schools, tutors. I mean, it's just not even the same mindset. So, but I know at the end of the day, I have to convey as a father, that I have to convey what I have, the knowledge, wisdom, the biblical foundation that was given me. So I'm able to do that through a lot of different ways. I mean, thus far, my wife has greatly helped me there, because she spends the most time with our children. And so she is the one that has, at least up until now, conveyed a lot of the biblical principles. But I do it as well through, a weekly devotion with them, and just through life in general, our church, same thing. But, as they grow, I'm going to get more involved there. And then even beyond that, but just, hey, okay, now that you have that foundation biblically, now let's talk about real estate and the technicalities of that, and how you earn money in real estate. So, I mean, but they're all excited to learn, and so I'm excited to get them, involved in it as soon as I can. So
yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. It needs to be well rounded, and I would always say that the spiritual aspect is definitely more important than the financial aspect, but also the financial aspect has its place in life. I mean, yeah.
Yes.
So, but I think you made a point there that I guess whenever the next generation comes up in a different kind of lifestyle altogether, they don't have that same sense of hunger that you might have had. At the
Right.
same time, they have that privilege to maybe pursue what they want right out the gate, rather than you focused very much on the financial rewards in the early stage. What are you currently working on that really excites you? Something where you almost forget about the clock and just that sense of time is gone.
Investing,
Investing, yeah,
putting together real estate deals. I mean, and it's not even really the real estate. It's being able to be involved in something where you control it. You can bring it's being able to help people.
yeah,
Ultimately, that's what it is. Like, wow, I can take this piece of real estate that people drive by every day and don't even think about. I can actually use it to create money where I can benefit, my investors can benefit, vendors can benefit. I mean, so many people can be helped through my efforts on this real estate project, to be able to find those deals, put them together, bring them to people, and then have the investments work and pay out well, and then getting a call or an email from investors to say, hey, Jade, I really appreciate what you did for me and my family here. I mean, this deal was great. I mean, that really excites me.
yeah.
And so I say yes, that really drives me now, as far as just uh, occupation, what I can get up and do every day.
Yeah. I think that's a very rewarding component because every investment that actually goes as projected or better helps so many different dreams. Like every investor, every family comes with a whole set of dreams that are supported by making it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So now looking back, you said you were even afraid to make your first purchase. Was the first real estate that you bought, was that a house for yourself or was that a rental? Where did the real estate journey start, or what pushed you into that?
Again, it goes back to my father. So it started out. I was finishing up law school on the East Coast, and after I graduated, I got a job with a firm in Houston. So my wife and I moved here. We were probably here for 2 to 3 years. We bought a house, so that was our first home. I wasn't really, intimidated by that because I mean, I knew a lot of people that owned homes, so I mean, that wasn't really, a risky thing at the time. But about 3 years into it is when the housing market,
Yeah.
I mean, the housing crash occurred. Well, we were in we were in the process of selling our current house and buying a new house. So we were under contract to build a new house, and they were already building it. We had our existing house under contract, and that's when the bottom dropped out of the housing market in Houston.
Oof.
Well, I was faced with a choice there. Either I was going to carry two. Okay, what happened was that the guy that was buying our house backed out on us like a week prior to closing.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, he's like, well, hey, the house is worth less now than when I put it under contract,
Yeah.
so I'm not going to buy it, which, hey, yeah, I wouldn't have bought it either. So he backed out, and so now I was like, wow, I'm going to have two mortgages. At that time, I didn't think I could do that, and my agent said, okay, no problem. Rent your house out. I was like, no, I mean, I've only heard the horror stories, tenants, taxes, and toilets. That's all I've ever heard. I don't want anything to do with that. Well, God had other plans. Okay, so around this same time, my father was talking about this book. He said, son, I want you to read this book.
But this time it was not the Bible, right?
Right. It wasn't the Bible this time. And he kept talking about this. I'm like, Dad, I'm a lawyer. I'm busy. I have to bill a ton of hours every day. I don't have time to read anything else. He said, son, read this book. It was Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah, like a
And I read that
for
book.
real estate investors, right?
And man, it's like it just blew the lid off my head, man. I was like, wow, this is how you can build wealth. It was just like a light turned on. And I tell everybody, hey, if I ever write a book, it's gonna be titled The 2 Books My Father Gave Me.
That's a great title.
The Bible, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Yeah, a friend of mine, Lee Perry, childhood friend. He's still a friend now. We do a lot of business together. He gave me the title, so I'm not going to take credit for the title. But yeah, I like it too. So if I ever write a book, that's going to be the book. And so I read the book, and then, so I mean, all of this is happening around the same time. And see, again, I know not everybody, believes in God and all, but I just know, I'm convinced of it just because of what's happened in my life, that no, this stuff is just not happening by coincidence. And so it all happened around the same time. And so we ultimately got a renter into our house, closed on our new house. And I mean, it went fine. The people paid on time. They took care of the property. I mean, they were great tenants. Yeah. Okay, I said, well, man, what if I start doing this intentionally? Buying houses and renting them out. At that time, houses were dirt cheap. So it was like the best time. And so I said, okay, well, first thing I need to do is get educated on how to do it. And so that's what started my journey.
So it's really amazing how, I mean, what originally could have looked like a major failure because, you try to make that transition from one house to another actually took you to the next level in terms of financials because you were seeking for a solution in it. And then you were at the bottom of the market and suddenly you figured this actually is something that works. And did you start buying more properties in the early stage of the recovery phase?
Well, so this was probably 2009.
Yeah.
Okay. And I said, okay, well, first I need to get educated. I joined again. I hired a mentor and I got educated. So I probably spent a year and a half, just getting educated. And then I said, okay, now, and so my education entailed, okay, how do you find, at that time, it was all foreclosures, where you go to find the houses to get the loans in order to buy them.
Yeah.
Money to close on them, rehab them, all that. And then, and I think it was towards the end of 2010, I bought my first rental house. And I was scared to death, man. That turned out to be like probably my best investment ever because, I mean, it was a house where at that time it was maybe $50,000. It was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, had a 1-car garage. I mean, built in the early 2000s. It was almost a new house, and it was for $50,000.
Yeah, how much were you able to rent that out in the early stage once you took it over?
I think it started out around, I want to say around, I don't know, $1,000 a month or so.
That's that's already in itself a very projectable investment.
Oh yeah. Like, I mean, that house cash flowed about $700 a month.
Yeah.
I mean, it was nuts. I mean, and so, but like that same house, actually, I sold it maybe a few years ago. It was worth, I don't know, $150,000. So I had it about, I don't know, man, if I brought it in 2010, I probably sold it. Yeah, about, I don't know, 7 years or so, man. I mean, just a cash cow. Yeah. So I've been making $700 a month off the house since like 2010. Plus I sold it at like, $150K. I mean, so it was like 1,000+%, ROI on the house. I mean, it was just crazy. But so that was my first one. And then after that, I said, okay, well, Jade, now it's just, hey, let's just buy another one and another. Then some other things happened along the way. Around 2011, 12 was when the economy in Houston really got bad, and you started to see a lot of layoffs.
Yeah.
They even started laying off attorneys at law firms. And I was at a firm at that time where a lot of my colleagues were getting laid off, which was just horrifying these were some of the top attorneys, graduated from the top schools, and they're getting laid off. I mean, that just doesn't happen.
It's a wake-up call.
That's when I realized, that even though well-educated, high-paying job, at the end of the day, it's just a job. It's just a job, and it can be taken away. And that was when I really made my mind up that, hey, Jade, you have to take this real estate serious now and get financially independent where you don't need a job.
Yeah.
And so between 2010 and 2012, I was buying houses, but maybe I would buy a house or two a year. But after 2012, that's when I said, okay, I got serious about it. And probably the next 4 years, I bought like 50 houses.
50 houses?
And yeah. And then from there, I said, okay, well, now it's time to do larger deals. And that's when I moved into apartments.
Yeah.
So,
how did you originally handle that? Did you have a management company that supported you? Or did you build your own
houses?
Team? How did you handle that part?
Yeah, with the houses, I started out buying in the Houston area. When I started out, I was managing the houses because at that time I only had like maybe 5 or 6 of them. So I was managing the houses, and I was fortunate that I had good tenants and I had a good maintenance guy that was also an agent, that was also a property manager. So I mean, if I ever needed anything, I could always call him, and he would, just charge me, a la carte kind of for things that I needed him to do. So I was able to manage it, but he helped a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, after I bought those houses, this was probably around 2015. I felt like the market in Houston was getting too pricey. Of course, now looking back on that, I know I
should have just kept buying houses. Didn't have a crystal ball, right?
Yeah. But I said, well, what if I look back at home in Arkansas? I could probably find houses pretty cheap. That's when I went back to my hometown. It's just outside of Memphis. And I said, okay, well, let's start buying houses here. So I put together a team. I got me the best team in the area, a manager and maintenance. And I started buying. I started a company, and that company started buying houses. And that was when I was able to really scale, because I was able to buy a lot of houses because the houses were a lot cheaper and it was way less competition there than it was in Houston. And then at that point, that was when the houses were really passive. So I mean, it was like I really owned the company where all I did was buy the houses, and then my team would do everything else.
Yeah. Did you build that team from scratch, or is that someone you teamed up with locally?
Well, yes, I built it from scratch. I mean, my maintenance guy, he's been a friend since I was a kid. My father mentored him. Also, he was he grew up in our church and everything. So I really knew him, and I knew he was a handyman, a maintenance guy. But growing up, I didn't really know how good he was. But I mean, this guy built his own house.
Yeah.
Like, he read a book and got up one day and bought some land and say, hey, I'm just going to build a house. And he built a beautiful house from the ground. I mean, plumbing, foundation. I mean, he GC'd or either did all the work. So the guy knows everything to do in a house.
Yeah.
And he said, hey, Jay, man, if you want to start buying houses here, I'll help you. And so I said, okay. And we started buying houses. Well, I would buy them, but him and his company, they would rehab everything, maintain everything. So it was a great opportunity where he was able to grow his business and I was able to grow my business. And I mean, and we still work together that way to this day. So, and now I did have to go through a few managers, but ultimately he put me in contact with a manager and she's worked out great. Yeah. She's probably, I think, the best manager in that area. So, and they've managed houses, apartments for me. So just done an outstanding job. So
that's amazing. I mean, I think it also takes a lot of trust. Like you need that level or a certain kind of relationship to build a team like this.
Yes, I encourage anybody and I caution them if you're going to be investing out of your area, then definitely you need a team you can trust.
Yeah,
that's the most important thing.
So for someone who is a passive investor, what do you think they should be looking for in the GP deals, in the operators? Since we're already speaking about trust, I mean, I think trust is always foundational, sure. But what else should they look for in order to protect their investment?
Great question. Well, first thing I think is you really need to know the character of the person. You want to know that they're a person of high integrity. So, some people can kind of pick that up, after meeting you a few times. Others, it takes some more time. But you need to figure out if this is a person with integrity, where at the end of the day, minus what he or she knows or doesn't know, their experience, all that, if they're faced with a question of doing the right thing for me as a passive investor or just doing the right thing for them individually, you want to know that, hey, they're going to do the right thing for me as their investor, because they trusted you with their hard-earned money. So, I mean, that's the first thing, is the character. So you want to find a person that you trust and that you like. I mean, so after that, of course, you want to know if they have experience. I mean, you want to ask, hey, what's the worst deal that you've done and what's the best deal? Because these are still investments, so it's not a guarantee. So, I mean, those questions. Also, someone that communicates well, that, you can pick up the phone and call or text or email and actually get a response. And if you need to chat, that they're eager and open to, have a call with you, because again, you're investing with them. Yeah. And so you should always be able to speak with the people that you invest with. So, yeah, I mean, those are some of the more important things.
Yeah. And as a GP that has deals in so many different markets, how do you protect the downside, for example, for the investors? Like, how do you familiarize yourself with those particular pockets? Like, for example, you just ramped up your activity in Atlanta in the last year a lot. Mm-hmm. How do you usually go about it, that you make sure you kind of understand also not only the macro perspective, but a little bit more of what's going on in the micro?
Sure. Well, of course, that's another great question. I mean, you always want to know the market that you're investing in. So when I'm going into markets out of Houston or say Arkansas, where I grew up there, I know the markets, right? Houston, I'm here, I know the markets. If I'm in another market, I have to have a partner that knows that market. Yeah. Okay. Ideally, have a partner with boots on the ground. Yeah. Or have a person there on the team that's boots on the ground that we trust. Okay. So like in Atlanta, one of my partners in Atlanta, he's been there for like 15, 20 years. He knows the market. I've known him for years. And so, I mean, things like that where, okay, all right, well, now I have a person that I trust in that market that knows it. Now I can start getting educated. But until I get educated well on the market, I know that one of the partners is.
Yeah.
Okay. And then beyond that, it's just, underwriting the deal conservatively. And, of course, everybody says that they underwrite conservative. So it's always a question of, okay, what does that mean?
Sometimes I'm wondering, I just saw a deal
Yeah.
getting close today that I underwrote, and I actually visited it with the broker and we passed on it. And I saw a couple other guys that I know bought it. So I'm wondering, what did they see that I didn't? Or were they just more aggressive?
Well, keep in mind that every deal a person buys, 9 times out of 10, the only reason they got the deal is because they paid a price everybody else thought was too high.
Yeah.
See, so they according to everybody else, they overpaid. See,
yeah.
So, and sometimes people do overpay, but that doesn't mean the deal is not still going to do well. I mean, so every deal I bought, I felt like I overpaid a little.
Yeah.
So, that's a great question. And it typically comes down to a lot of times those groups, whoever buys a deal either just has more experience where they're confident that, hey, their team can pull off some aspect of the deal that maybe you and your team didn't know about or didn't have the breadth of experience there to really confidently be able to say, okay, we can do this. Also, keep in mind that it could just be a group that may have lower return expectations.
Yeah, sure.
See, not every group needs to double their money in 3 to 5 years. Some are fine with doubling their money in, say, 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
So it all depends on the deal. So, but protecting on the downside for anybody just means, hey, you need to understand the market. You need to understand historically what's happened in the market as far as rent growth, occupancy, cap rates. You need to understand what's going on now with the interest rates, inflation, and just have a good feel for where you think that market can go to. I would like to tell you that it's just some, clear guidelines. It's not.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the best operators I know, these guys buy deals in areas where it's like, I know this area. I'm pretty confident on where I think this area is going. I think this will be a great opportunity. I think we'll make good money with this business plan. They don't know, but they have a conviction about that deal, that area where they're willing to put their name on that deal to say, investors, I think 5 years out, we'll be happy that we bought this deal.
Yeah.
And that's really what it comes down to, man.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a crystal ball moment there that you have to see the future before others sees, because then you don't feel like you're overpaying. Right. Like if you have that kind of conviction and you see where trends are moving, and maybe you see some trends that other people don't see yet, and then you can make a judgment that someone else is not competitive on.
Right.
So, one of the things I wanted to touch up, I think, from the story you shared so far, you must be a tremendous role model in your community, because you said you came from humble beginnings, from an area that wasn't doing so well. And, you really seized opportunity over and over again. And you're now actually in a position where you're very charitable. And I know you also eventually became a partner of a law firm. And that was a very personal, important step for you, because you really wanted to see kids from your community that someone can do it and has a role model.
Exactly. Yes. A lot of people ask me now, why do I still practice law? And it's for a number of reasons. I mean, I still enjoy the practice of law. And also, yes, like you said, is that, um, I work for one of the largest firms in Texas, in the nation. We're what's considered to be a big law firm. And it's the percentage of just African American attorneys, period, in big law firms is very low.
Yeah, I
I
actually
think
looked it up the
somewhere in the
other day,
teens.
and I was like,
Uh-huh.
it was like crazy how high the percentage of just plain white guys is compared to African Americans nowadays. I'm like,
Yes. And, as far as African American partners at big law firms, I mean, it's
yeah,
like
that's
less than
even.
2%. I mean,
Yeah,
it's almost non-existent. And so, I was probably at a stage in my career where I was fine with not being a partner, just being, say, part-time at a firm. But when the opportunity came up to become a partner, it really wasn't like, a monetary reason why I chose to do it. It was just that, well, hey, Jade, I mean, at the end of the day, what's like the best part of this is, hey, man, you're one of the few that made it. So, I mean, you have an obligation to take the opportunities so others,
yeah,
other young black attorneys and black kids coming up can say, hey, I mean, here's a guy from Arkansas, a guy that, couldn't speak well, a guy, that everybody just kind of looked, over me. I mean,
yeah,
if this guy can do it, I can do it. And
yeah.
and so, that's definitely what really drove me at the end of the day to say, yes, I'll do this. So
I think this is such a crucial moment in anybody's life. And like looking at someone, it's like, hey, if this guy can do it, I can do it. Like for some, it takes those role model. I think there are some people who just have it in them and they explore it for themselves, and they just don't have that glass ceiling. But there, I think there's a larger majority of people, like I think you and me can relate to that, when we have those kind of role models and we see where we can take it, and it's like if they can do it, I can do it. It just takes it to the next level.
I would agree. Growing up, I guess I never, and it's interesting that you sort of bring that up because I mean, I'm not a person necessarily where I need to like see, like as a kid, when I thought about becoming an engineer, I didn't need to see a black engineer in order to know I could do it. But that's where my spiritual foundation comes into play. I knew I could do it because my Bible tells me that I can do all things through Christ. And so that's what I believe. It doesn't matter if I'm black, white,
Yeah,
you know, God told me I can do it. So if God tells me I can do it, nobody else can tell me anything else. And so that's what's sort of driven me to say I don't need to see anybody that looks like me to do anything because I know I can do it. But I had to step back and say, well, Jay, not everybody is like you.
yeah.
Some people need to see people that look like them. And so that's when I said, you know what? Yeah. Um, Certain things I need to do and be not for me, but for other people. See, so
Yeah. And I guess again this ties in very well with I think through your entire story there's that sense of giving back. It's first you wanted to provide for your own family. Eventually the mission just becomes bigger and bigger, and
mhm.
eventually you were at a point where it wasn't even about the monetary rewards of being a partner. It was just about the overall message and the contribution you can make. And
Exactly.
yeah, I think
Yes.
that's very commendable, that you always grow outside of yourself. You step through those levels of the comfort zone and you just become more and more giving from what I'm observing and the story you've shared with me.
Thank you. That's the goal is to just to do more and to be greater used of God to help people. I've been very fortunate. God has given me a lot. He's given me a lot of opportunities. And so I say, well, hey, the least I can do is to give back. So
yeah. So given where you are right now and the many challenges you've already faced, where do you see yourself in the future? Where would you like to take this?
That's a great question again, and I wish I knew, Hans. I mean, at this stage, man, I'm already way beyond anything I thought I would ever do. I mean, all of this is like, icing on the cake.
Yeah.
I mean, I've already, pretty much anything monetary that I ever wanted to do. I mean, I'm like, okay, I can do that now. It's not, I can do it now. But there's still a lot that I know can be done. Because see, the way that my life has always worked is that I've never seen the end. I feel like God just reveals it to me a step at a time.
Yeah.
And so I take a step of faith, and He says, okay, well, go this way. So I don't know. It's like I can only see what the next step is. And so right now, what it is giving more. Last year, we gave X amount. Next year, I want to do more.
Yeah.
And the only way I can do more is to continue to grow. And, hey, man, let's just see, what God does. It's been a great ride. And, hey, I'm having fun now. I'm at a place in life where, I can kind of start to sit back and actually breathe for the first time. I feel like I've been working hard since college, nonstop. But now I'm finally at a place where it's like, okay, I can kind of take a step back and say, wow, I've done a lot, but man, it's still so much more that I can do. So let's see where the second half of life takes us to. So
just getting started. Now you still have all that daddy time ahead of you, and you can play with the girls. And
oh yeah, yes, and I'm learning to do that because, I'm sure you're the same way, man. You're a young man. You're grinding to, provide for your family, but it's easy for us as men to kind of lose sight of them doing what we think we need to do to provide for them. And so over the last couple of years, that's been, it's like, okay, Jay, well, hey, your kids are not going to be young forever. They're not going to be here. So take advantage of this time now. So yes, absolutely. That's what I'm doing now. Where it's like next week is spring break.
Yeah.
Okay, Dad, spring break. We're focusing on spring break, having fun with the family. We're going to Disney, and the kids are excited. I'm like, oh Lord, I got to stand in these long lines. They're gonna have a great time, and I'm gonna enjoy it too. So
you enjoy that they enjoy it. That's how it works, right?
Right. They're happy.
Yeah.
I'm happy. So.
Well, awesome, Jade. Thank you very much. This was an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for sharing and being so open. And it's really inspiring to hear and see what you've been doing, not only in the last couple of years, but over the entire span of your lifetime.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for joining us at the Path to Wealth. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Check out our upcoming guests and be sure to share it with all your friends and family that want to take their life to the next level of wealth.